Hello, hello, hello. My name is Deepak. I'm your host today for Pixel Pushers. This is a show about VR and UGC platforms. We felt the original reason for this show is we felt like not enough VR creators, XR creators, and UGC creators are getting enough shine in the industry. So we wanted the show to highlight this amazing work and the amazing creators behind it. But right now, I want to introduce my host, Dilmer. Dilmer, why don't you take it away?
Hey guys, I'm Dilmer. So great to meet you and having you here today. I am really excited to have a really good friend. His name is Alex. You might know him already from a lot of his work on theater, on prototyping with Apple Vision Pro. He's one of the pioneers of using Apple Vision Pro with Unreal. He's also an instructor for Unreal and has done amazing work on the community. So Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Dilmer, and thanks, Deepak. Really excited to be here.
Super excited to have you.
We are super excited.
I get a lot of flack from like Jay Dunn and other VR and XR creators that I don't play enough in this space. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing because Dilmer is an expert. I'm a noob. So I love hearing other people talk about their spaces.
No, absolutely. We need to get you up to speed, Deepak. And you have a lot of knowledge on UGC, which is what makes this really unique. So I want to start with Alex. I want to know the community learn about what you do, what you work. Maybe you can take us through your XR journey. How do you get into the space? I think that will be very interesting to the people that are listening.
Sure. So hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Alex Coulombe, and I run Agile Lens Immersive Design. We're an XR creative studio based out of New York City. I've been around for about 10 years, and I first dove headfirst into the world of VR in particular in 2013 with the Oculus Rift TK1. I was working as an architect with Fisher Dax Associates Theater Planning and Design, and immediately saw this utility to be able to take VR headsets and use them to help us with planning out the buildings we were designing. And of course, with theaters and venues, you can imagine how useful it is to be like, there's a column kind of like obstructing the stage, but if we can put on a VR headset and understand it's not that bad, or we need to move the seat a little bit, tremendously useful in addition to all the other things you might imagine, like changing material options or cycling through a few different ways to do the balcony or putting different things on stage. So I should say I find that I am the luckiest guy in the world to be alive right now with this particular technology, because as a kid, I bounced around to a lot of different interests. And the three that I maybe settled on as the things that excited me the most were live theater, architecture, and emerging technology. And I couldn't have thought in a million years that I could find a career that is able to combine all of those things. But because virtual reality is inherently such a spatial medium, so is architecture, so is theater. And so they actually all have coalesced quite well into, you could say, the pillars of this company I run. And everything that we do is somewhere within that spectrum.
Man, that's amazing. I think a lot of the work that you do today for my audience is pretty advanced, which is great, because I think you have a lot of knowledge and background on using a variety of different devices and technologies and combining, something that, theater, like real world theater, and then bringing that into XR. To me, it's fascinating. So I want to ask, so for me, one important part is to bring newcomers, like net new developers that are doing, web development, iOS, love your kid there, into the platform, right? People, young people that want to get into XR, I would want to know, from your perspective, what would you recommend people to look at or to do to do XR? Because XR has gone ups and downs, and a lot of people say VR is dead. Is it really dead? What are some ways that people can actually break into XR and get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely gotten a lot easier since you and I, Dilmer, first were playing with these SDKs and tools. And as anyone who's seen Dilmer's videos know, it used to be sometimes you needed a very thorough walkthrough to even get up to speed with some of these SDKs. It's tremendously easier now. You can open up Unity or Unreal or Godot, and if you've got a VR headset, probably within an hour, you're going to be able to have some kind of way to be looking at something in VR. The recommendation I would give is similar to what I'd give people with just about any passion, just not VR, which is to find a very particular use case that you want to have it for. And I'll give the dumb example for me, which was music. So as a kid, I had a lot of music classes. I was in band and did like saxophone, and I had like mandatory guitar lessons. And I came from a very musical family. My father was in a rock band for 30 years. My brother is someone who can like pick up any instrument and play something amazing very quickly. So I was someone who liked music, but I also felt like I was never going to be able to do it just because of everything in my life up to a certain point. However, when I had a friend in high school who was like, hey, Alex, let's go start a band and date girls or whatever, I was like, okay. So suddenly I was in a position where it was a little bit more goal oriented. And I was like, okay, let's learn how to play specific songs. And it was a little bit more like, I want to learn how to play this specific song, and I don't need to worry as much about scales or, all of the music theory that would traditionally go along with that. And that became such a great way in, because it was like, I'm going to learn, Vultures by the Offspring or something like that. It was an early song I learned on guitar. And it was really satisfying to start with really simple songs and realize like, oh, I can play this. Maybe I'll try something a little bit more complicated now. And when I eventually needed to learn how to code in Unity in 2013, I didn't know any C# or JavaScript at the time. So similarly, it was like, well, maybe I can find the equivalent of like power chords, something really simple like how to do a for each loop or how to turn things on and off. Though once you get those foundations of like how to do some of these really basic things, and you're doing it for a specific project that you want to be able to show people, in my case, of course, very early on, like how do I go to different parts of this 3D model of the theater and show what it looks like in VR? That's tremendously motivating, way more than anything that's too abstract or theory-based. So long-winded answer, but anyone who wants to get started with VR, like find a very particular project that you want to learn. Don't worry as much about feeling like, well, first I need to learn all the basics of Unity or whatever and go through 5 hours of tutorials. Like, no, have an idea in mind of what you want to see, what you want to do, and see how well you can streamline through YouTube videos, ChatGPT, whatever, learning just the things you need in order to learn that. And then you'll find that you're actually creating a bit of a scaffolding, and you'll learn more of the theory and the other foundational things along the way. And at some point you might be like, boy, I really need to understand prefabs better or whatever. And then you can like go and find more detail about some of these foundational things you missed along the way. But the biggest lesson to me is like, don't worry about building up that entire foundation right at the beginning.
Alex, I like that because I think I get trapped in trying, like I'm not great at programming, but I get trapped because I try to learn the theory instead of going like for particular use cases. So it seems like one of your use cases, right, is you're trying to pioneer like actors in these theater space or musicians, right, at a concert space. Like maybe can you walk us through one of those use cases? Just like, what does that look like?
Absolutely. So this also goes back to a nice little origin story. So I was studying architecture and theater from 2005 to 2010 at Syracuse University. It's a 5-year program to get your B.Arch degree. And in 2008, I was fortunate to study abroad in London, where I just got back from, where I just saw Dilmer, over in Brighton. And I had the most incredible semester. Like the architecture, of course, is amazing. London's an amazing city for architecture. But I was also able to sneak into / petition to be in a lot of theater programs at Syracuse that I technically shouldn't have been allowed in as a drama minor and not a drama major. So I got to do things at the Globe Theater. I got to see a ton of amazing shows. And the professor we had, Michael Barclay, he always had these incredible connections. So all the live shows we saw in London, whether it was opera or dance or, more traditional theater, whatever, we were always very close to the stage. And I found the experience of watching world-class performers from, 10 feet away was electrifying and incredible. And I came away from that semester in 2008 wondering if there was any way that technology could start to make that very rarefied experience more democratized and more accessible to the world. So virtual reality very quickly started to feel like a way toward that, this ability to ideally through performance capture and different techniques to make you feel in virtual reality like you are 6 feet away from an incredible world-class performer, even if you're actually on the other side of the world from them. So that's kind of been my North Star. And we, an early version of that was this version of Christmas Carol we do, starring Ari Tar, that we've done 5 or 6 different productions of now. And as part of that, everyone who's in the audience is in virtual reality, and they're able to be very close to Ari and now Debbie Deer, who plays the ghosts. And it's a very cool, like immersive retelling of that story. But then also what we were doing in London was we have this grant with the Royal Shakespeare Company and XR Network Plus, and that was to build out a virtual reality rehearsal space. So in this case, the goal not yet is to get the end result of people being in VR watching the show. It's about using VR as much as possible throughout the production process. So that way the stage managers and actors and directors and, everyone who's part of the crew is able to get as much confidence as possible in what this actual experience is going to look like when it's done. And so the testing we were doing up at Stratford-upon-Avon was with this incredible group of folks at the Royal Shakespeare Company who were able to put on a headset and using mixed reality through Meta's SDKs and everything, feel like they were in a theater, the Swan Theater, which is up there, thanks to Ryan Metcalf from Preview for the digital twin of the actual space. And they're just in a rehearsal room. They're like in a normal theater rehearsal room, but they feel like they're in the actual space. We're using mixed reality to like cut everyone out, so they're not just seeing avatars of each other, they're seeing actual people. We're letting the stage manager put on blocking notes and saying, from this line to this line, you're moving from this part of the stage to this part. We can have floating scripts in the air. We can cycle through set designs. And for people who are an important part of the production design process who aren't physically there, we're able to have them join remotely as avatars. So that's been a tremendously cool experience, because when you're tech nerds like my colleagues and I, we'll spend all this time building the tools and testing them as much as we need to make sure they work, but then to actually hand them off to professionals, especially relatively non-technical professionals, and to see what they can do with those tools, that's tremendously satisfying.
Man, that is, there's so much to unpack in what you just mentioned.
We go through. Yeah.
Specifically, I think the part that is fascinating to me is, and this is, I relate to it because when I do a video and if I can go outside, and for instance, when I was making videos on geospatial with AR Core, I was able to go to downtown area in Salt Lake City and look at the buildings and put aliens on top of the buildings. So I think I like what you were saying about going to places and facilities and then testing the tech, because there's a lot of complexities in there, but you don't know what you don't know until you go to the facility, and then I start realizing that, it wasn't as easy as we thought. And then there's so many things that specifically on what you're doing with, there's co-location, right? Because you have to have a facility and you have to have that. It's kind of the facility, and then the actors come in and then they have headsets. And I'm curious, how did you use our technology at Meta to facilitate for that? Were there customizations that you had to make on the SDK in order to co-locate? And then we talked about actually tracking the expressions of the actors. Yeah. I'm curious, if you can give us kind of a walkthrough of how that works, what were the challenges, and what worked successfully versus what didn't work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I've been grateful for is most of the projects Agile Lens has worked on over the past 10 years or so, we've maintained some control over the IP and everything that we're building, which means that we're able to carry the things that we're building from one project to another. And I particularly like when that becomes cross-disciplinary. So we've been doing for a couple of years this very complex luxury real estate project for Four Seasons over in Austin, Texas. We have this 5,000 square foot VR showroom space that people can walk around in. And we tried very hard when we began this project in 2022 to see if we could get meta shared spatial anchors to work, because a co-located multiplayer experience was a big part of that. For a number of different reasons, we could never get it to be quite stable enough. So we ended up actually using OptiTrack to track the MetaQuest Pros as they go through the experience. And all the while, though, we were continuing to try to get meta shared spatial anchors to the point where they could rival a full, $250,000 OptiTrack setup. So we finally, earlier this year, I can't really say it's anything out of the box. We've done a lot of massaging of the Unreal Engine version of the Meta Shared Spatial Anchor SDK, but now it feels great. We've got a few different methods for co-locating. We have a host who puts down, one anchor, and everyone, ideally, we've done it with up to 50 people, will co-locate to that location, and they can all be in the same VR or MR experience together. And if anything's wrong, if, Meta's servers are down or something, we also allow for anyone who doesn't co-locate to then go put their own local anchor. And so if we've got a little piece of tape on the ground, as long as everyone goes and places their anchor in the same spot, they will still all feel like they're co-located together. So that's been a nice contingency plan. On the facial expressions side, when we first did our versions of Christmas Carol, we were using a Technoprops helmet, courtesy ILM, which basically puts an eye iPhone out in front of you and gets very robust facial capture data using a free app called LiveLink Face, and maps very well to metahumans. And we were getting excellent real-time performance capture transmitted on cloud servers and viewable in VR. But Ari Tar, who was the only actor in the show at the beginning, really felt a little bit disconnected from everyone. He wanted to feel more engaged with the audience and make eye contact and have those moments that make live theater feel so special, where it's that shared experience. So when the MetaQuest Pro came out, we said, well, fantastic. This has eye tracking, this has face tracking, but there was no out-of-the-box metahuman support, just the native meta avatars. And so I then went on this very complicated journey, figuring out all the ways that tracking data could be translated over to a metahuman. And the way that I basically ended up doing that was I ended up using the Meta Movement SDK from Meta, let it translate to the meta avatar. And then I kind of used the meta avatar as this like meat puppet where like he's invisible, but I'm like pulling data off the meta avatar and then bringing it over to the metahuman. And I could go much more into like the complicated details of doing that with anim graphs and all that.
That is interesting, man.
Yeah. But, long story short, we were able to eventually get our actors, Debbie Deer, once she joined the production as well, to be entirely in a MetaQuest Pro, get really robust finger tracking, body tracking, face tracking. We're just using MetaQuest Pro right now. We went from Accent suits, Rococo suits, special gloves, $1,200 helmet with a phone attached, to just MetaQuest Pro, which has been pretty cool. And everyone who sees the show is like, what kind of performance system are you using? And they're always very surprised to find out that it's literally just the actors in a MetaQuest Pro.
Just like Dylan was saying, so many things to unpack there. I'd love to, because you sort of deal with both the client and the player.
Yeah.
So like, or actors and the person trying to use the device itself, right? So like, how do you go about, because this always fascinates me, convincing people to get comfortable to either co-locate to that space or get actors to use that device. And then my second layer question to that is like, how does things like MetaHuman like help bring another layer of immersion? Because the biggest difficulty for me sometimes has always been like, I've seen an avatar, but it's not as visceral enough for me to make it like a real connection. But I think every year I see improvements, and it like always keeps piquing me.
Yeah. And certainly with the personas on the Apple setup and the codec avatars from Meta, like we definitely, I think, can all see a future where we're past the uncanny valley and it's very natural to engage with people. Most of the productions we've been involved with, we try not to mimic what someone actually looks like too much. Like we might base a little bit of it the same way like Andy Serkis's face was a little bit the basis for Gollum and Smeagol, because that helped with some of the performance capture elements. We find if the characters have some level of stylization, even if they are approaching something that is meant to be a little more photorealistic, the way metahumans are quite good at, it just helps a little bit. The moment where you're like, oh, it looks a little bit like Deepak, but like I can kind of see where the eyes are wrong and the ears a little bit off, like that's where people start to feel like there's something that kind of unsettling. Quick side note, while in London, we went to the ABBA Voyage concert, which is incredible. And even if you don't care about ABBA, you should go see it. And the avatars, as they call them, are fascinating because they're all rendered in Unreal Engine. They're probably using something related to metahumans, if not the same technology that was used for like Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. And the effect is so convincing when you're far enough away from them, but as soon as they do like a giant close-up and you're right there tight on their face, it's like this is the best version of this in the world, and it's still like, oh, there's something just a little bit wrong about it. So it is something you have to be very careful with. On the question of like, how do you get people more comfortable with using this technology and all that, one thing is we try to tell people to treat this like puppeteering. We try to tell them to treat it like mask work, which are more familiar terms to people who especially have a performance background. So it's not as much about thinking that this is you and everything you're doing is being translated one-to-one. It's more about having some understanding of like, when you move your arm this way, the avatar's arm is going to like move like this. And then you just try to get comfortable with the idea that you get the avatar to move and perform in a certain way. And if you need to make a big like, gasp, like you might actually need to go like much bigger or something in order to get that to translate to the avatar. So we work with our actors to try to understand the nuances of how they use this as a tool to get the performance they want. We're actually giving a talk and a paper presentation at SIGGRAPH in Vancouver about some of the tools that we've given our actors to make this easier. One of which is giving the actors the ability to bounce between being inside the body and being first person, which is great for making eye contact, but then also going to a third person view where they know exactly what they look like to everyone else. So they have this kind of outer body experience, which also helps them just be much more aware of exactly what their body's doing. So if they're doing something in a scene that is less face focused or less like I'm looking at the audience focus and much more like, big gestures with the whole body, it can be really handy to see that from outside yourself in a way that is quite difficult to do in the real world, of course. So that kind of stuff is really interesting. And we try to let all of our actors know, like, things are going to break, things are going to go wrong. And we try to find a good balance between being in the headset and being out of headset, which is great because then it's like you can do something for a little bit in VR, you can record it, you can play it back and talk about it. And eventually we find that all the performers we work with get really quite comfortable and excited about the potential and the possibilities of what they can do in headset compared to some of the limitations being outside of it.
Man, that's amazing. Now that we talk about we talk a little bit about the technology on you're using the Quest Pro, and we know the Quest Pro kind of like it's not really being supported as much anymore. And so I'm curious, like from your point of view, and then you also test the Apple Vision Pro. I'm assuming you know other devices such as Pico and then so on. So I'm curious, like what would you want to see on the future generations of devices that can help you with theater, that can help you with the projects that you're working on? If you had your dream headset, like what would it have? How much would it cost? Let's just hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, I've had these conversations with some of the folks at Meta. Kirk, I can say Kirk Barker's been like tremendously great at listening to a lot of these things. But like from a headset perspective, really at the moment, like Quest 3 combined with Quest Pro would be amazing because then you get like the better pass through, the better chipset, the face and eye tracking, the cameras that are better located for body. We were part of releasing Body of Mine on the Quest store last year. And that was our first kind of foray into figuring out how to translate metahumans and full body tracking into a standalone Quest experience. And we found that when people would say, what's the best way to see the experience? We couldn't necessarily tell them to use Quest 3 or Quest Pro. We actually got it very well optimized, so it ran very smoothly using application space warp on both devices. But a big part of the Body of Mine experience, which kind of takes you through what it's like being trans by putting yourself in different avatars that, of course, look quite different from your body, is we found that the Quest Pro, of course, much better for facial capture. We're just using audio to move the mouth and using some automated things with Quest 3. But with the Quest 3, you are able to do more with the body capture because the cameras on the Quest 3 are better positioned for that full inside-out body tracking. So, I mean, at the moment, it's not like looking super far into the future, but like give us, the latest chip with the best pass through, with the cameras all located in the right places. And also I should mention that in Unreal Engine 5.6, we did a bunch of stuff with this at Unreal Fest in Orlando. There's a tremendous new set of tools for metahuman performance capture that can just use a webcam. And so I had a really good talk with the folks on the metahuman team about like, if we could just find a way to get the video feed, like the raw video feed data from any VR headset, could be MetaQuest or Apple Vision Pro or Pico, that raw video feed from inside the headset can actually now, through machine learning and some incredible tools on the Epic Games side, translate into really robust real-time performance capture. So anything that starts to enable that, and just, we love the fact that we're down to just the MetaQuest Pro. We're nervous about the fact that it's no longer a supported device, but anything that lets us continue to be like, here you go, actor, here is just a headset, and it's going to capture your hands and your body and your face all in one, that becomes super exciting.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you a completely different question. I appreciate your feedback on that. But so I have 2 kids, and I use my kids a lot for testing on the videos that I'm making. So if I'm doing like a co-location or multiplayer type experience, I need somebody to help me with. So how involved are your kids on like the stuff that you do with XR? Is that important for your own career, like to get them involved in somewhat of what you're doing? I'm just curious, your takes on it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the very first podcast sort of thing I had was called XR Kids, and it was my friend Logan and I, and we were both had children of the same age, and we would do these back and forth kind of asynchronous like video blogs of like the cool things we were showing or making with our kids in XR. We both took the stance that like even though people say like, oh, don't put your kids in VR until they're 13, that there was too much of a learning opportunity. And we felt like it was worth the risk to introduce VR to our children much sooner. So, the key thing is like never treat it like a babysitter. It needs to be very curated. It needs to be something you're doing with your children and not the way some parents would like leave their kids in front of a TV and go do other things for 4 hours. So my kids both started being in VR when they were 2. They're almost 8 years old and 10 years old now. Oh, wow. And anecdotally, from my experience, it's been a tremendous journey for them to understand how to engage with the world spatially. We very quickly developed a nice relationship with Balthazar and the folks at Inner Space VR, who made Fisherman's Tale 1 and 2, Mask Maker, One True Path, these really, really lovely games. And my kids have actually become beta testers for them because they would find like the weirdest little bugs. And some of it's the kind of stuff that like natural kid things like, oh, if you walk into the corner of the wall and you press the A button 100 times, the game crashes. It's like, yeah, a lot of adults won't do that. Some kids will. But some of it's like the more complex, like spatial puzzles, where like in Fisherman's Tale 2, you throw your hand and you throw your head in these different places and then you solve these puzzles based on where those things are. And my kids were able to solve these puzzles in really novel ways that were really useful to Inner Space VR in starting to think about how they refine some of the games. I love renting my children out to like other people who have really cool VR games they want to see. We also got to do this a little bit with Forever Home, this new pet game from the team who made BOGO. It was really cool to get early access to that and for the kids to give feedback there. But also I'm more on the enterprise side. And yeah, I get to put my kids in like early versions of architecture experiences and VR theater experiences and social impact experiences. And I love hearing their feedback. It's tremendously valuable and quite different from what you'd get from anyone over the age of 12.
No, the interesting part is like things have changed, right? Like 10 years ago, when I was younger, I was spending most of my time on a mobile device. And that's what everybody was on, a mobile device playing mobile games. And then now I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. And it's always a couple of things. So they either are playing Roblox or they're testing Horizon Worlds because I'm telling them to test Horizon Worlds because I want them to give me real feedback. So I'm using them as a way to get real feedback and understand like the demographics because that's really not my generation. Yeah. And then so there's like Roblox, Horizon Worlds, and then they also go into like Animal Company. Mm-hmm. That's something that I've been playing, or Gorilla Tag, and all those free-to-play games. And then like there's other applications they also use on the device. But it's just very interesting how things are changing now, where there used to be just mobile devices or like consoles. And now they're like, that's not really a priority. It's like mainly either on mobile, on Roblox or Minecraft, and then also jumping into headsets. So it's just fascinating to see, how the generations are changing, and we need to adapt to that, right? Like we need to see what they like, how things are getting used, specifically when working on the tools. So yeah, found that very interesting.
Who could have predicted that Gorilla Tag would become as popular as it did? Like it's a low visual fidelity game that has like thousands of things happening at once. It's very confusing, and everything about how you move in it makes a lot of people nauseous. And yet, like my kids love it. A lot of children play it as much as they can, and you just can't predict some of this stuff. Yeah.
Well, Alex, I think you have some things you want to show us, so we'd love to like see some of your demos of some of your work.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about the RSC project. I've got a little YouTube link here. Maybe we can share, although it's going to be in anaglyph for those friends of ours with 3D glasses. Let me try sharing my screen here. And so this is just a little snapshot from what we were doing with the RSC, recorded directly from a headset. So the reason why this is in anaglyph mode is a lot of people don't know this. There's a feature using SideQuest that actually lets you record from a quest with left and right video, which is kind of cool. I'll turn off the anaglyph here so it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. But it's cool that YouTube still supports this out of the box. I imagine it was one of those really early features that they're like, should we delete this? And people were like, nah, just leave it. It's fine. Here's the 2D version.
I didn't even know that feature existed, to be honest, Alex. So
yeah, most people don't. It's like a little checkbox in SideQuest to be like, you want to do side-by-side video? And it looks really good too. It's a pretty uncomfortable experience when you're in it, but the video is pretty smooth. So what we're seeing here is we've got 2 actors over at the RSC rehearsing some lines from Titus Andronicus. And then we have a 3rd actor who's just coming in as a VR avatar. And on the stage, we have some blocking notes that are actually starting to note where characters should be at different parts of the show. We have some very nice Meta XR acoustic based sound objects over here to trigger certain things and make sure we understand what it sounds like in the space. We're seeing the model of the Swan Theater here. And we just found that the feedback from the stage managers and everyone who was involved with the show were really thrilled with how much easier this made their lives. Like even something simple like the ability for the actors to have a sense of where the audience would be seated and to talk, up, like to look up to the balcony, as opposed to when you're in a rehearsal room where it feels very weird to look up toward a low ceiling. So this was quite cool. And yes, the actors can use the controllers. They can also use hand tracking. This is just me responding to a few audio things that we can't hear right now.
Alex,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one quick question. So, because I'm just looking at it and there's a lot of stuff in here. So there are 2 people that are currently in the physical environment, and then there's also a virtual, the one in green.
Yes, that's right.
Is that a virtual avatar? So you have a co-located experience with a virtual reality experience, and that it's also all being synchronized with multiplayer.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yep. And so this is using our enhanced, spatial anchor system. So there's just like a little spot in the back of the room where we have a piece of tape, and people were just able to kind of note like that's 000, and then everything co-locates to that. What's also kind of cool here is you might notice that the floor is not a virtual floor. This is the real floor. Yeah. And so we have all these different options for what you're seeing in the real world versus the virtual world, which is really helpful for the actors because this can be toggled at a global level by the stage manager, but also each actor can kind of set it up for what feels comfortable for them. Like, for example, they might just show the white line. So they just are thinking about the size of the stage, but they turn everything else off and they just want to be focused on the actual people who are in the room with them. So this was a really cool way to get to mess around, and you can see the mouth a little bit of the virtual actor here that just tells you that they're doing their lines at the moment. And of course, what we want to do is we want to combine what we're doing with something like Christmas Carol, where we have full body tracking and like much more robust avatars, and then bring that into here so you get much more performance capture from the virtual attendees as well. But the overwhelming feedback was like, this is amazing. I just feel like I'm in the room with all the right people and all the right aspects of the show that I need to do my job well. So much of what we do is just about giving people more confidence in especially a design process. And it's incredibly satisfying when we see that going well.
So the end goal then will be that once you have all these people on stage, so through post-production, are you going to be replacing the people that are acting with metahumans, or how is that going to look?
Yeah, so this is entirely, here's what the actual rehearsal room looks like. So this is entirely to help these actors prepare for a real show on a real stage. Yeah, so the final result of this has nothing to do with VR and these technologies. It's just about making them feel more confident about, the final version of all this.
So it's like, it becomes like this amazing training simulator.
Exactly. Yeah, it's training and simulation, same way you would do it for someone learning to do, complex medical surgery. We're just doing it for actors on a stage.
That is fascinating.
It all applies, right? Like flying, like acting, like medical procedures, like it all creates this practice.
Exactly. Yeah, I learned the other day that when someone flies a commercial plane, you pretty much go right from the simulator to like the next day, you're now flying real passengers. I assumed there'd be like some kind of like intermediary step, but no, like there's enough confidence that you know what you're doing after spending enough hours in the simulator that like you then go to do the real thing. And I'm surprised there aren't more industries that have enough confidence in their training to allow you to do this. So like one of the roles that we were told would be tremendously helpful for our tools is an understudy. So an understudy is someone who is just kind of backup. You have your main actors who are there on stage. You've got Hugh Jackman and Ray Fiennes or whatever. And then one day one of them's sick. And then you have another actor who has to come on stage to play that part. And that can be a tremendous challenge for the understudy because they already feel like, well, people aren't here to see me and I haven't gotten as much rehearsal time with the cast, and you just lack a lot of the same tools and I want to say like support compared to the primary actors in a show. But with this, we can also record all the performances, which makes it very easy then for an understudy to tag in and be like, okay, I'm going to listen to all the pre-recorded lines from everyone else, and I'm just going to bounce off them in my own time just to make sure that I feel as comfortable as possible with the show, while seeing all the set changes, while being in the actual theater space, while seeing the light adjustments. So again, we're just trying to make everyone feel a little bit less stressed out about what can be a very stressful process.
Yeah, I think I relate to that because when I got the job at Meta, Alex, one of the things that I had to do is I'm used to doing recording, and at the beginning it's like super uncomfortable because you have a camera in front of you and you're like, this feels weird, like I'm talking to a camera. So then you do it like 1,000 times, and then it becomes a normal. Then I got the job at Meta, and it was, you have to go and present in front of like hundreds of people and talk on stage, and I just hadn't done it before. Then a friend of mine recommended me to a few applications that I actually never try it, but I'll just tell you that they exist. Is where you basically put the headset on, and then you can tell like how many people are going to be in the audience. And I guess that over time kind of becomes like more normal because you're talking to people and you're in the headset, but it tries to simulate what it would look like when you speak in front of a big audience. It's still up to today. I haven't tried it, but I know a lot of people have benefit from using something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and are you guys familiar with the concept of memory palaces? It's like an old ancient Greek thing. Ken Bai loves to talk about this too. But I remember when I first started to study architecture, coming across this concept. There's a book, I think, called The Art of Memory. And back when people would have to memorize very complex speeches, whether it was for a theater show or they're going to be a politician and they're giving a big speech to everyone else, one of the classic techniques was to visualize a piece of architecture or a place that you're very familiar with, and then tying like different lines or things you need to say to those different spots as you move through a space. And I've found myself doing like, simpler versions of that where I'll just like walk through my house in mixed reality and I'll put like slides from a deck at different places. And I'm already a very kinetic person who has trouble standing still. So it will help me though, like walk two different spots and like it's this slide here and this slide here, because probably the biggest problem I have when I'm giving presentations, especially if I don't have time to rehearse them properly, is remembering what slide is next. And so by actually making it a spatial sequence, there's something really valuable about just starting to like build up that memory in your head of what that presentation is going to be. But again, applies great for actors and everything else. We were able to, of course, like put actual script pages at certain points on the stage, which is both useful because that's where you're standing on stage when you're delivering that line, but also you're just remembering like the visuals of like standing in that spot on stage and seeing this big virtual text from that part of the show.
Man, I'm going to have to try that tip next time. Yeah, I like that idea.
Like one of the things I think I love watching SNL.
Yeah.
But I know where their eyes, where the
cue cards.
Cue cards are. But imagine if glasses got to a point where they could have those digital cues, then they could be more like stage actors and move with the set.
Exactly. Tons of potential. Yeah. And like we jumped into this so quickly with like, we want to do full blown virtual reality performances. Like we started doing that in 2018 in High Fidelity, which was also made by Philip Rosedale. And it was like, we had all these studies going on about like, what's the best venues and what's the best avatars and what kind of shows should there be? And it was still with this goal of like doing entire shows inside virtual reality. But it's funny now, almost 10 years later, to be like taking a little bit of a step back and being like, well, even if the final show is still going to be like a regular show on a regular stage, how can all these tools be incredibly helpful through the process of developing that show?
Well, Alex, it has been a pleasure, man. I think we had so much to unpack, and I hope everybody in the audience, I'm sure they're going to benefit from everything that you share with us today and your amazing work on theater and with technology and emerging technology. So thank you so much for joining us today. This was super, super inspiring.
Thank you,
Alex. Really love for you we like to also end the show on one question. So you can close us out. What do you see as the future of XR in 10 to 20 years?
Oh, 10 to 20 years. That's very interesting. So I was fortunate to get the Orion demo, thanks Boz, back at MetaConnect. And that to me was already like so much of what I thought we were still very far away from. Because for me, the future of XR is something that is comfortable, maybe a little fashionable, not the kind of thing that scares people away and feels like, oh, like I understand there's value to this thing, but it's going to mess with my hair and my makeup and all that. Like I've given so many VR demos over the years, and like I know who are the people who you can get to put a VR headset on and who are the people who are just never going to do it. However, the people who are going to put on, Meta Ray-Bans, which the Orion glasses are basically the same weight of, is much, much higher. So I'm looking forward to this future, let's say 10 to 20 years from now, where it's very easy to have these things on, and they're not a crutch for you, but they're a way to enhance your day. And it becomes a very easy way to walk around the world, engage with people in other languages, see augmented data on top. You're walking by restaurants and you can see the menus on them. You can see reviews. You have very clear directions of how to get from point A to point B. You're meeting someone from the first time, or you're meeting someone who you can't quite remember. And I see Dilmer over at Develop Brighton. And it's like, you last spoke to Dilmer at AWE in 2022. And we talked about these things. And it becomes like a bit of a conversational lubricant to like help you just figure out all the things that you should be engaging with people on. I had this moment at Develop Brighton where I found out that someone had exactly the same birthday as me. And like, it would have been so easy to not make that discovery. Any way that technology starts to help us feel more connected, more engaged with each other, if it helps us do our jobs better. Again, the training thing is tremendous. Like, it's been an example for so long, but the ability to be like learning how to fix a carburetor, and you've got like some augmented overlay that's like kind of walking you through it, and you're still the one doing it, but it's helping you develop a certain kind of muscle memory through these tools. Like that's where this all becomes really exciting. I think my kids won't say this, but maybe my kids will be really baffled by the idea that we used to just walk around the world with no digital information. I think there's always going to be a desire to have kind of a digital detox, and that will be a very refreshing thing. But I think it's going to be very normal to always have this extra kind of layer of information in a contextual way around us, compared to nowadays where it's like we're hunched over this little tiny black screen and it's all here. It's not going to be here anymore. It's going to be all around us in a way that is most relevant and most useful. And I just hope that we have enough control over it. I got to hang out with my friend Keiichi Matsuda of Liquid City over in London. And of course, he has this amazing film called Hyperreality, which is a little bit more of a dystopian look of where this could all be. And so our desire, of course, is to maintain as much control and agency over all this as possible. We want people to have all the tools, but it never needs to feel like a giant backpack full of tools. I've been playing a lot of Death Stranding too, so I'm thinking about heavy cargo and that kind of stuff. I think there is a more utopian version of all this, and I hope that I can play some role in getting us to that.
Again, Alex, so many nuggets in there. Death Stranding 2, you had me. Opens up your eyes. It's like I know we got to run, Dilmer, but like, it's the same argument. Like, there's pros and cons of any technology. I'm a firm believer of that. Yeah. Like, one thing AI does so well, or can do well, right, is it brings information that was trapped to elites to anybody.
Yeah.
Just so XR brings spatial awareness to everyone, that those networks of information, so it can open up your eyes. You can use it for evil, right? Your friend's dystopian, which I'd love to hear his version. But then it can also open good doors as well.
That's what we're really excited, Alex, about. I mean, and you requested it early on. I saw your tweets of getting pass-through camera access, and how, I saw it early on. You were one of the ones who were asking for it over and over and over. And that's why, like, I'm going to put a CTA here, like, make sure that that you guys look at our announcements, because we're going to be doing an online mixed reality hackathon on pass-through camera access with AI. And not only because we're doing a hackathon and I want you guys to join, I think there could be a lot of novel use cases that come out of that, especially with what Alex mentioned, knowing what people are around you and then getting additional context. I think that's huge. Even when you go to an event, like you said, and you want to know who you talk to, and sometimes I forget faces, and then I had to look at X to find out, oh, that's their avatar. Oh, that's the person that I talked to that person before. So so super excited, guys, and make sure that you subscribe to the channel. This is a pretty early channel. We're really excited, so just hit the notification bell and subscribe, because that's going to really help us. And thank you everyone for listening in. And thank you, Alex, for joining, and Deepak for being an amazing host as well. And I guess, Alex. Thank you, guys.
Can I give a really quick shout out of a couple places to find me?
Do it.
So check out my Unreal Engine podcast, Unoff UE Pod, on all the different social platforms. Meetup.com/Unreal Engine if you're ever in New York City and want to hang out with other Unreal Engine people. AgileLens.com, AlexCoulombePresents.com for Unreal Engine authorized training. And if anyone's going to be in Stockholm for Unreal Fest, I will be giving a couple talks over there and would love to see people. All done.
And we'll put those links in the description.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you all.